We're going to take a look in this video at order of operations with mixed fractions. So you see our first example here, we have 2.5 plus 1 7/8 divided by 1 1/4. So we're going to have to remember a few things. We're going to have to remember our order of operations, and we're also going to have to remember how to convert a mixed fraction to an improper fraction. So let's begin by doing that. We remember, looking at this first fraction, 2.5, that to convert the mixed fraction 2.5 to an improper fraction, we multiply here, and then add here. So 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5 over 2. And doing the same thing for 1 7/8, 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15/8. And now divided by 1 1/4 is 4 times 1 plus 1, which is 5/4. And now what we have to do is we have to remember to do our brackets first, because that has a division in it. So now we get 5/2. I'm just going to write that because I'm not touching it. And now this will become 15/8 times, we change the sign to multiplication, remember, for this division, and then we flip the denominator of the fraction that we're dividing by. So 15/8 times 4/5. And you're not required to cancel necessarily, but it's really nice here and it makes our numbers smaller. So we can cancel here top to bottom because, again, with this multiplication sign here, it's really like there's a multiplication the whole way across. So 5 goes into 5 one time, and 5 goes into 15 3 times. 4 goes into 4 once, and 4 goes into 8 twice. So here we land up with now 5/2 plus, and 3 times 1 is 3, 2 times 1 is 2. So we get 5/2 plus 3/2. We already have a common denominator of halves, so that's the same as 5 plus 3 over 2, which is 8 over 2, which you can simplify, and that equals 4. Let's take a look at our next example and make it a little bit harder still. So if you look at this one, we've got a subtraction within a bracket and then a multiplication at the end. So again, the first thing we're going to have to do here is we're going to have to do, in terms of operations, we're going to have to do our brackets first. But it is important here to convert all of our fractions to improper fractions first. So let's go ahead and do that. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3/2, plus, and I'm going to write my 1/8 there, I don't have to convert that. And now 2 1/8 is the same as 8 times 2, which is 16, plus 1, which is 17/8, minus, and 1 1/4 now, we convert that by doing 4 times 1 plus 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5/4. And so now I'm going to spread things out a little bit because I notice in here I've got to now get my common denominator. So I have 3/2 plus 17/8 minus 5/4, and that's times 1/8. And so now I land up with 5/4, and I need to convert it to a common denominator, and I see here I have a denominator of 8 and 4, so I can make my common denominator 8, and remember you have to multiply the bottom by 2 to get 8, and so we must do the same to the top. So we're going to multiply this fraction here by 2 over 2. And that's going to give us now 3/2 plus bracket 17/8 minus 10/8, all multiplied by 1/8. And so we carry this down and we have 3/2 plus, now inside the bracket we have a common denominator of 8s, and 17/8 minus 10/8 is going to give us 7/8, and times 1/8. And so now we have to do our order of operations first again. So we see here we have to do our multiplication first, and we have 3/2 plus, and now 7/8 times 1/8. Well, we remember when we multiply fractions, we multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. So this will give us 7 over 64. And so now we have 3/2 plus 7 over 64. So we need to convert this 3/2 to a common denominator of 64. And we see we can do that by multiplying the denominator by 32, because 32 times 2 will give us our required 64. And so we multiply the numerator by the same thing. And so we land up with 96, which is 32 times 3, 96 over 64 plus 7 over 64. And now that we have a common denominator, 96 and 7 is 103 over 64. And 103 over 64, well, we know we're going to get 1 for sure. And if we do our division here, 64 into 103, we know we're going to get 1, which is 64. And now we have to subtract to see how much we have left. And we can't subtract 4 from 3, nor can we subtract in the second column 6 from 0, so we need to borrow from the 1 and make the 0 a 10. But then we've got to turn around and borrow from the 10, so we'll make that one a 9 and carry the 1 to the last column. And so now 13 minus 4 is going to give us 9. And 9 minus 6 will give us 3. So we have a 39 remainder. So 103 over 64 is the same as 1. And 39 64ths. And that is expressed as an improper, or a mixed fraction rather. And for the last example, let's make it even a little bit more complicated. Now we've got two sets of brackets with a division and an addition. So again, our first step is to convert all of these mixed fractions to improper fractions. So 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1, and I'm going to spread things out a bit here, is 5/2 minus 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5/4, and we don't have to convert the 3/8, plus, and we don't have to convert the 3/4, but we have divided by, and now 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so we get 3/2. And in here, I'm not going to do a separate line for this one this time. I can see here that I need a common denominator between 8 and 4. So I know I need to multiply my denominator here by 2. So I also multiply my numerator by 2. And now on my next line, I have 5/2 minus 2 times 5 is 10/8 plus 3/8. And then plus, and you know what, I can do some work here. And I'm going to take my 3/4, and remember when we divide our fractions, we flip the denominator and we change the sign to multiplication. So I change the sign to multiplication, and then I've got 2/3. And so I'm moving right along here. I've got my common denominator here. I don't need a common denominator here. I can do some canceling in my second bracket here. 3 goes into 3 once and once. And both 4 and 2 are divisible by 2, so 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 4 twice. And so this part here, I'm really left with 1 times 1, which is 1 in my numerator, and 2 times 1, which is 2 in the denominator. I can combine this into one fraction and give me 13/8. And now I have 5/2 minus 13/8 plus 1/2. And I don't really need the brackets around there. And it doesn't really matter the order that you do these in at all. You know what? I'm going to do these two first, and the reason why I'm going to do them first is when we add or subtract, it doesn't matter the order that we do them, and 5/2 and 1/2 have the same denominator. So on the side here, 5/2 plus 1/2 is, because they already have a common denominator, going to be 6/2, which is 3/1. So here I'm going to have 3/1, and again, that's from here. That's combining the 5/2 and the 1/2, minus 13/8. And now I need to get a common denominator, and I know my common denominator is going to be 8, so I have to multiply 8 by 1 to get 8 in that denominator, and so I need to multiply the numerator by the same number, and 8 times 3 is 24/8 minus 13/8, and 24/8 minus 13/8 is going to give me 11/8. And 11/8, well, I know I can get 1 out of it, and that will take care of the 8, and then I'm going to have 3 left over, and again, that's when I divide 8 into 11. 1 times 8 is 8, and then I subtract, and I'm left with 3. So my answer here as a mixed fraction is 1, and 3, my remainder, over my original denominator, which was 8. So then I get 1 and 3/8. And that is a really, really good way of summarizing, because we've got some addition here and some division and lots of order of operations. So I hope that gives you a good idea of how we can combine these operations with mixed fractions.